It was 1956 when a couple named Alice and John decided to move to an old house in the northern suburbs of the United States. This house, which was about a century old, was mysteriously located among thick trees in the heart of a dark forest. A house with a stone facade devoid of life, broken windows and walls that each had a story to tell. The previous residents of this house were a family named Walter, but they suddenly and mysteriously disappeared from the house in the 1930s, and no one could ever find a clue of their fate. Alice and John, who had just married, decided to buy this house to start a new life away from the hustle and bustle of the city. They imagined that by living in such an old house, they could experience peace and get away from the daily life of the city. They were even unaware of the coldness and ruin of the house, and were only pleased with its historical beauty. Upon entering the house, the first thing that caught their attention was its deep and heavy silence. No sound came in from the outside, and even the light summer breezes seemed unable to enter here. This silence was mysterious, strange, and threatening. Alice and John decided to spend the first night in the main room downstairs, where the decor still retained some of its grandeur. The walls of the room were covered with old paintings and wooden furniture, all of which had a sign of a mysterious past. Nothing special happened on the first night. Alice and John drifted off to sleep, but during the night, a faint noise was heard from upstairs. At first they ignored it and assumed that the noises were caused by the old house. But in the following nights, the voices became clearer. The rustling sounds that seemed to come from behind the walls and the footsteps that moved slowly in the empty rooms upstairs. Alice was beginning to feel panicked, but John was more concerned that her mentality was being influenced by outside factors. He tried to comfort Alice and asked her not to pay attention to these sounds. But over time, Alice and John could no longer ignore these voices. One night, the footsteps were so loud and clear that they felt someone walking by their bed. One night, when John was barely asleep, Alice decided to go upstairs and find the source of the noises. He took a flashlight and carefully climbed the stairs. In absolute silence, his footsteps echoed on the stairs. Along the way, heavy breathing could be heard from dark rooms, as if someone was hiding behind the doors. As soon as he entered the hallway, his flashlight hit something that made his heart beat faster in fear. At the end of the hallway, an old door was open. Alice slowly walked towards the door with a hesitant heart. He turned his flashlight towards the room and suddenly noticed something that shocked him greatly. In the center of the room was an old wheelchair, just like the old memories of the previous house. The chair was strangely turned, as if someone had been sitting on it. He turned back in fear, but as soon as he approached the stairs at the same moment, the sound of the door behind him slammed shut. Alice screamed and ran up the stairs. As he ran out of the house, he felt something following him in the dark. When he came to, breathing heavily, he told them they had to leave the house. But John laughingly told him that it was only his imagination and that there was nothing in the house. But the next day, something more terrifying than anything Alice could have imagined happened. While Alice was cleaning one of the rooms, suddenly a child's cry was heard in the room that no one had entered. Alice ran helplessly to the door and opened it, but there was nothing but silence and darkness. Nearly a week had passed since they had been in the house, and each night the noises grew louder. The sound of the doorbell from upstairs, unknown footsteps in the night, and sometimes even sounds like deep breathing echoed through the empty rooms of the house. John, now deeply concerned, began researching the history of the house. Searching local archives, John discovered that Walter's family, who once lived in the house, disappeared for unknown reasons in the early 1930s. Some reports claimed that they ran away due to financial or psychological problems, but there were rumors that the house was the site of a series of mysterious psychological experiments. No one has been able to discover the exact reason for the family's disappearance, but according to some longtime residents, the house has a special attraction to attract unexplained spirits and energies. As time passed, Alice and John couldn't take it anymore. The nights had turned into an endless nightmare. One night, when they decided to leave the house for good, while they were packing up, the noise upstairs came again, this time louder and closer than ever. That night, they couldn't take it anymore. Alice and John left the house and never returned. The dark and mysterious house remained hidden in the forest, waiting for those who dared to enter it, and the sound of unseen footsteps still echoed in its walls.